Hello, my name is Doug Smith. Welcome to another edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our special guests today are Deputy Police Chief Jeff Furtado and our new Animal Control Officer, Ariel Fisher. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Ariel, to start with you, I wonder if you could discuss your background and qualifications for this animal control job.
Sure. I've worked in animal shelters the last probably about 4 years. I was recently at the SPCA in East Providence. And I'm also certified as an animal cruelty investigator through the Law Enforcement Institute at the University of Colorado.
Okay, did you actually go out there, or was it a distance learning?
It's a national certification, so the classes are all over the country.
Okay.
And it's 120 hours, so it's a week-long class, and there are 3 levels.
Well, that's great. I hope that's not a big problem here in Portsmouth, but if there are, I'm glad we have somebody like you that could investigate it. How did you hear about this job?
It was actually posted online, and a family member of mine told me about it. She knew I was looking for a new job, so she let me know, and I applied.
Oh, great. Do you live in town? Do you live in Portsmouth?
I don't. I actually live in Warren, so it's about 20-minute drive, so it's not bad.
So, yeah, it's right across the bridge.
Yep.
As long as that bridge is open, you're in good shape. Let me ask you about a couple more mundane, I guess, animal control issues.
Sure.
These are the ones that people normally come in contact with the animal control officer on. What do we do if we see a dead animal on the road?
You can call me. It depends on what animal it is. You can call me regardless, and I'll get the right people out there. If it's a domestic animal, a cat or a dog, I can certainly come and take it. If it's a larger animal, like a deer, that's something that DEM has to handle, but either way, I'll get in touch with the right people.
Now, what is the telephone number that they should be calling on?
You can call my telephone number. It's 643-0136.
Okay.
And then DEM's is 222-3071.
I suppose we could also reach you through the police department.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that if anybody has any type of an issue with an animal, to call our dispatch. A non-emergency line would probably be best, 683-0300. The reason for that way the dispatcher can take that information, the officer in charge can know what's going on with the call, and between the dispatcher and the officer in charge, we can make sure that we get the proper resource on the scene to address the problem.
Okay, so
and also it's recorded in our day log, which is also important.
Yeah.
You know?
And so probably the 0300 number is probably the best initial
That would be the
because
best.
then they'll contact.
Correct.
Me,
and
yes.
you know, it could be a situation where the animal control officer is not on duty.
I was going to say they'll know
could be
where
out
you
of the
are.
building, could you know, be tied up on another matter. And this way the call is sure to go to a person, not to voicemail.
Sure.
And again, we can assess the situation and get the proper people out on the site to handle the call.
Okay, so the number to call is 683-0300.
Correct.
And explain your problem to the police dispatcher, and people will take care of it then. Another issue, being an area with a lot of open space, we have a lot of kind of animal issues, I guess. And I know deer ticks are a problem in our area. I'm constantly finding them with my dogs. And the deer population seems to be on the rise. Do we have a big problem with our deer population in Portsmouth? Do we have more than most communities or something?
I don't necessarily know that we have more than most communities, but definitely the population is increasing. But that's also another matter for DEM. If you saw a deer anywhere on a main road or anything like that, you would have to call DEM and they would handle it for you.
Now, the DEM actually have people in trucks and stuff that come out and do things?
They do. They have environmental police officers,
Yeah.
so they'll come out and they'll take care of it.
Okay, because I know some of our experiences with DEM have been that it's difficult to actually get them to finally come out and do something, but those may have to do with permits and things.
Yeah, and you know, DEM, like most other
safety.
agency, I mean, they're working with limited resources
Right.
as well. You know, so a lot of times we all have to work together to get the job done.
Yeah.
You know, another issue with deer too that we've been seeing is them getting onto our roadways and being struck by vehicles.
Absolutely.
And that can be a real safety hazard to the motoring public because the animals are large enough to do sufficient enough damage to take the vehicle off the road. So that certainly is one of our concerns as well.
Yeah. So if they see a sick or injured deer, should they still call the same number perhaps?
Absolutely.
683-0300?
Correct.
And you guys will
We'll get out, we'll evaluate the
mobilize the right
situation,
resources to take
and
care
then
of it.
we'll mobilize the right resources to handle the
Now,
problem.
I don't know if part of the problem is people feeding deer or not. Is that kind of an issue? Or?
I think just having food out in general is an issue. It attracts all kinds of wild animals, so having
Yeah.
food, garbage, Because they're so used to people, a lot of them aren't necessarily as afraid as they should be.
Yeah.
So they're willing to walk up into your yard and eat whatever is in your garden and that kind of stuff.
You know, I think Ariel makes a very good point here. I think people probably have the best interests of the animals in mind by leaving them food or water or whatever the case may be. But that type of practice can attract the type of animals you don't want on your property, like, for example, coyotes and other potentially dangerous animals.
Sure.
And, you know, that is really one of the biggest things we can do to keep those nuisance-type animals away from our property and keep our pets and our loved ones safe from these animals.
Sure, good advice. Speaking of coyotes, I know they seem to be a growing problem here in Portsmouth. I know they've had problems in Newport and Middletown as well. One of our friends who I talked to this morning lives up on Union Street. I mentioned to you before, and she put some dry bread out thinking the birds would get it.
Right.
And 2 minutes later, she heard a coyote howling. She looked outside, and there's a coyote eating the bread.
Sure.
So
I mean, that's right on point, exactly what we just spoke about.
Yeah, and the thing is, they seem to lose their fear of humans or something.
Right.
So I know they're dangerous to certain kinds of domesticated animals, like dogs and cats, probably. Have we had any incidents where they've actually been attacked or eaten by coyotes?
Very recently, I did have an incident that someone's family dog was attacked by a coyote. So it's definitely really scary. You don't want to leave your animal outside after dark by themselves, because that's exactly what happened. They had a fenced-in yard and thought that it was safe. It's not. They can get around the fence, over the fence. If there's food, they'll get to it.
Yeah.
So you definitely just want to be really cautious.
I think you're right, because I have a big fenced-in backyard. It's got like a 6-foot chain link fence, but we've had, one of my other questions is going to be about skunks. We've had skunks squeeze underneath the fence. They can get in there somehow.
And Doug, not to beat a dead horse, but you alluded to the fact that Middletown had a pretty serious problem with coyotes. I believe it was probably in the media probably about a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I recently spoke with the chief of police in Middletown about the problem. He indicated to me that the incidence of complaints concerning coyotes has dropped considerably. And what he told me was that he contributed public education in terms of not leaving food out and the like to be the main contributing factor to reducing these types of calls.
Okay.
So again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think that's really an important message.
And you know, that's part of the purpose of this kind of program, is
Sure.
to try to tell people what's going on in town. And so the real message is, don't leave food out.
Yes.
Correct.
Or
Or garbage.
wild
Or
animals,
garbage,
or garbage or anything else out where they can
Where
they
they'll
can get
smell it and
access
it'll be
to it,
attracted
yeah.
to your
Right.
property.
Absolutely. So that's how we can help with the problem, essentially. Another one that we talked about earlier are at least 3 turkeys. These turkeys are huge.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I've seen them, they're like it's a pack of 3, I think. And they seem to be working their way north on the island because, again, those were recently seen. Well, you saw them
This morning.
This morning.
Yes, I did.
And the problem is they seem to have no fear of the roads or anything else. You know, again, I'm not sure what people can do about this. They're wild animals. They kind of come and go in their own thing.
Certainly.
What would you recommend, Ariel? Just stay away from them, or try to keep...
Definitely stay away from them. They might not look dangerous, but they can be. They have very, very sharp talons, so stay away from them. If one of them happens to get hit by a car, you can always call the station, and I will go out and I can take care of it. But in general, just stay away from them. They're wild animals. So.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, Doug. Our concern, as I said before, with the deer, same would be with the turkeys. It would be them interfering with traffic.
Yeah.
That can be a problem. So certainly if we see this developing, we will be in touch with DEM and consult with them and
See if they
request
can
their
relocate them or
assistance to
something.
perhaps relocate the animals for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, they were, it appeared to me anyway, for a while on, up by the funeral home, they were coming out on the road.
Sure.
And people were slowing down and driving around them and everything
Right.
else, and it looked like it could get dangerous. Up there,
Absolutely.
especially there's a lot of traffic. Right there, it was the road was fairly wide, but still it could happen just about anywhere. Another question that I was asked was, occasionally you see marine life, and I'm not just talking about the fish carcass that rolls up on the beach, but I'm talking about perhaps something larger or or stranger, if people encounter something like this, I don't know if this is under the purview of the animal control officer or not, but should they contact you anyway just to let you know that the things on the beach, whatever it is, a stingray or a...
Definitely. They can contact me either way. It's not something that personally I will be able to remove, but I can go down to the scene and check it out. We recently had a dolphin that washed up on the shore.
Really?
Yep, over in Common Fence Point. So it's another DEM thing. They can't always remove them, but Mystic Aquarium uses them a lot for research, and some local university will use them, so there are plenty of people that can
Okay, so you can
definitely
find somebody that can come
Yes.
down and do the right thing with it. Okay, that's great. A question that's kind of near and dear to my heart. We have leash laws
Yes.
all over the island.
Yes, we do.
It's not just in Portsmouth, unfortunately. I assume part of your job is to enforce the leash laws.
Yes. It's a big part of my
What
job.
just out of curiosity, what are the fines, or what do you do with people who you catch letting their dogs out the leash?
Well, for the most part, the first thing I just give them a warning, just letting them know. Not everybody is aware of the leash law, but I have caught several people at Sandy Point and at Glen Park. They just want to let their dogs run, and I completely understand wanting to let your dogs run free, but unfortunately, you have to follow this leash law.
Right.
But there is fines if I keep catching you. The first offense is, I believe, $20. So they're not steep fines, but they're still a fine, and I would really prefer not to have to fine people for this.
I know, it's a tough one to have to get fined
Yeah,
for, but
but it's really for the safety of everyone involved.
yeah,
It's for the
understood.
safety of
Even
people's
other
dogs
and other
yes.
people walking their dogs.
Exactly.
I understand that. On one level, I understand it. On another level, I have 3 dogs.
Exactly.
And one other thing, Doug, I think that's important to point out, and Ariel can probably speak to this as well, is there seems to be some confusion as to whether people can use what's known as an electronic leash as opposed to a physical leash. And maybe Ariel can address
Okay,
the
yeah.
specifics on that for us.
It does need to be an actual, like a nylon leash. Can't be an electric leash that goes to their collar and you can just kind of give them a little zap if they're running far away. You need to have complete control over the animal with a physical
Sure.
leash.
Well, a lot of times the battery's dead, or
Exactly. That
Sure.
people
It gets
have electric
interference.
And they're not
fences.
always effective, you know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't think
depending
they'd
on the
be
drive
effective
of the
with my
animal.
dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned Glen Farm, or the Glen, in Sandy Point Beach. Are there any other open spaces in Portsmouth that you can think of that would be, suitable for walking dogs on a leash?
Those are the two that seem to be the most popular places. I'm not from the area, so I'm still learning everything, but those, I spend a lot of my time just patrolling over there, and those seem to be pretty popular.
Those are the primary spots.
Yeah.
Certainly there are other areas, but nothing that big, where you could really get out and go for a brisk walk with your animal.
I mean, there are trails. It's really pretty down there, and as long as
Yeah.
you have your dog on a leash, and everyone can enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess the other thing, just to remind people to clean up after their dogs. I mean,
Yes,
that's
Yeah, I'm glad you
that should
brought
be.
that up.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to tell people that, but
You shouldn't. I mean, there is no actual law for cleaning up after your dogs, but it's really just common courtesy.
A lot of
Yeah.
communities do have ordinances
Yes.
requiring that pet owners pick up after their animals. Unfortunately, we here in Portsmouth don't. But we rely on the good sense of our pet owners, and hopefully they'll take care of that problem for us.
Yeah, down at the Bristol Ferry Town Common, we have Department of Public Works has put one of those doggy bag dispensers
Sure.
and things, and there's a trash can right there.
There's
so-
one
Yeah.
down in Island Park as well,
Yeah.
down at one of the entrances to the beach, down off Park Avenue. So
So those kind of things at least make it convenient, but I think people should always carry a few of those things in their pockets when they're walking these guys anyway. Kind of another question. So basically, there's no place in Portsmouth that they can run.
no, there isn't.
is it-
Except
where
on your own property.
Right.
Yeah, well, I have a big backyard, but it's not big enough, you know.
Sure. Right.
But I guess I have to go over to Tiverton and find some wide open spaces or something to do this stuff. I'm almost afraid to do that because they have hunters over there. And I'm not sure I want to get my dog out there where guys have guns, you know. But we mentioned this one too. This is kind of a strange question, but how about exotic pets like snakes or spiders or even monkeys? And I mean, people in other parts of the country have had these things, and I know we've had issues with snakes in Portsmouth.
We have.
Do these things need to be registered with you? Or are there any kind of rules or whatever about these pets, and
There are
where
rules.
can we find them?
Yeah, there are rules. There's an ordinance that was recently passed. If somebody's interested in exactly how it reads, you can get it at Town Hall. In general, you can't have large exotic animals. People can have tigers in their backyard. But I do know some people have smaller snakes. But it does become an issue, especially I know we had an incident where a snake had gotten loose, and they can get very large and they can kill dogs, cats, so you definitely want to be careful.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be scary. And I guess I wouldn't want to see a big tarantula running around free either.
Definitely not.
And I'm almost wondering whether people would, if they had like a tarantula as a pet and it got loose, would they even tell anybody?
I know they probably
You know,
wouldn't.
probably the first thing you'd hear is somebody, "Oh my God, where'd you get that?"
Yeah, I mean, we have found small alligators. There was one that was released into St. Mary's Pond a year or so ago.
A small alligator?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, initially when we received the complaint, we weren't too sure whether it was a valid complaint or not, whether somebody maybe saw something and mistook it for an alligator.
Right.
But we actually did have somebody go down and obtain a photograph of the animal. So yeah, it does happen. A lot of times
So is
people
it still out there rolling around, or is it?
No, I think what probably happened is it probably expired during the winter months when it became too cold for it
Yeah.
to survive in that environment. But a lot of times what happens is I think people think it's a good idea to have these exotic pets. They think it's a good idea. And then the animal quickly outgrows their cage or whatever the case may be. It becomes too much for them to handle. And very often people will just release the animals into the public. We would prefer that they contact our animal control officer if they do have a pet like that they want to get rid of. Instead of releasing it to the public, give her a call, we'll find placement for the animal, and then everybody will be safe.
Okay, that's good. That's great advice. And one other question too, before I get to you, Jeff, is I mentioned skunks. We sort of have a skunk pride. I live up by the Mount Oak Ridge, and it seems like just about every year it starts in the early winter time frame, and like I say, they can squeeze under my fence, and the problem is my dogs will go right after these guys, and of course the result is a smelly dog, and the skunk's long gone.
Right.
What about skunks? Is there anything that the animal control folks can do about this, or do we just have to live with it?
As far as like the overpopulation you feel that there is of skunks,
Well, I don't know if it's just we seem to get them up there.
more, yeah. There's not much I can do as far as that is concerned. If you do feel like the skunk is acting abnormally
Like maybe
and could
rabid or
have
something?
rabies, then
Sure.
definitely give me a call. Either way, if you see a skunk in your yard and you feel nervous about it, you can call me. I can at least come and check it out just to see if it does have any kind of symptoms.
Yeah, I guess so. If your dog was scratched or you were scratched by contact with one of these, or a squirrel even, I've got squirrels that are so close they're almost members of the family
Yeah.
out there, I think. But if you get scratched by these guys, what should they do?
Call me immediately.
Okay.
Definitely. There are different protocols depending on whether or
Yeah.
not your dog is vaccinated, which is
Yeah.
extremely
All
important.
of our dogs are vaccinated, of
Yes,
course.
I want to push that really. Every dog needs to be vaccinated, cat, dog, ferret. But one thing I don't think people understand is that if your animal is not vaccinated, they could be facing a 6-month quarantine.
Yeah.
So that's in a shelter alone for 6 months with no human contact, and it's at the owner's expense. So it's a lot on the owner, it's a lot on the animal. So the way to prevent this is just keep everyone vaccinated.
Yeah, that's good advice, and you know, we do this every year or whatever it is for these guys, and you have to do it to get a license anyway.
Yes,
The other thing is to make
exactly.
sure all your animals are licensed, your dogs.
Yes.
Correct.
I would guess too.
Doug, while we're on the subject of rabies, and I think that is an important subject, as you probably recall several years ago, we had almost an epidemic, really, of wild animals with rabies, mostly skunks and raccoons and things like that. I think it's probably important to let the public know what to look for in terms of potential rabid animals. And, you know, one of the main things is looking for nocturnal animals that might be out during the day. That's one of the first clues that there may be something wrong with that animal. The second thing may be that the animal is acting unusually. It could look like it's intoxicated, it could be unsteady on its feet, could be lethargic. The other thing, as Ariel pointed to earlier, most animals have a natural fear of humans. If when you are in the company of this animal, if it doesn't naturally want to flee,
Run away.
Right.
then that's another potential sign that there may be a problem. So should somebody see an animal like this, we would advise that they stay away, keep their pets away from the animal, and give us a call so we can come down and evaluate the situation.
Yeah. Now, what would you do in that case? Try to catch it in a cage, or and have its blood examined or something, or?
No. Unfortunately, rabies cannot be tested through the blood. It has to be tested
Okay.
through the brain.
So
Right.
you'd come down and check it out and see what you determine to do.
Yeah,
from
and
there.
unfortunately, Doug, I mean, we've dealt with a lot of this in the past,
Yeah.
and the standard protocol is to come down and evaluate the animal. If you've seen a rabid animal, when you see it, you know it. The symptoms that I described are almost always present.
Yes.
There's usually no mistake. And, you know, rabies is a pretty cruel way for an animal to die.
Sure.
It really is. It's a long, drawn-out process. Our protocol is to come down, euthanize the animal, and remove it from the scene. That's typically what we do.
Okay, now, nocturnal animals, are we talking about skunks? Are they normally
Absolutely.
nocturnal?
Raccoons.
Raccoons.
Possums, perhaps? I don't know.
Certainly.
Yep.
We actually saw a possum in my tree a couple of years ago. I don't know when we got there, and then he left.
And when we say we see them out during the day, we're not saying if you see them scurrying about.
Right.
That'll happen from time to time.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is them being open in
Yeah.
you know,
Sure.
unconcealed area. That's really uncommon.
Okay, great advice, and Ariel, thank you very much. Jeff, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn to you for a couple kind of police department type
Yeah,
questions. You were at the tabletop exercise, emergency exercise yesterday. How do you think
was.
it went?
I think it went very well, and you were there as well, Doug,
Yeah.
and I think you would agree. It was really an eye-opener for everybody there. It was good to sit down, take a look in a calm setting of potential serious threat that we could be facing. I think it was very productive in that the group came up with some very good ideas that we can put into place to make us better prepared to handle these situations, to better notify our community. And again, like you, I commend Mr. Klimm for getting us the Code Red system. It's something that the Chief and I have really wanted for the past several years, and I know the Chief has been a strong advocate for that system for quite some time.
Well, I really appreciated the opportunity and the exchange of ideas at the tabletop exercise, and I commend John King for putting it together. And
Yes, he did a fine job.
it was a great opportunity for everybody to discuss the possibilities and the problems and where we have to go.
Sure.
We plan to do a whole program, I think, on Portsmouth emergency procedures, et cetera, in the future,
Sure.
in the near future, I hope, because we're well into the hurricane season.
Yeah, we certainly
And
are.
I'm sure all of us are keeping an eye on the tropics down there and those NOAA reports. Just along those lines, what should people in Portsmouth be doing right now? This is one of the things we hope to provide some information on in an EMA website and an EMA Facebook
Sure.
page as well. So we'll have essentially 3 layers of communications: the critical one, Code Red,
Certainly.
and then more informational on the other 2.
Sure.
But what do you think people in Portsmouth should be doing about this time in the hurricane season to get
I
prepared?
think they need to be watching what's going on down in the tropics, just as you suggested. Keep an eye on the storms and take this seriously. Get their hurricane prepared kits ready to go. Don't wait until the last minute. Have a plan. Understand where your evacuation routes are. Consider, if you are evacuated, where you will go. Will you go to a public shelter? Will you go to a family or friend's house? Have a plan is probably the main thing. We, like you said, will be putting out additional information for the public on our website, and hopefully that'll be very informative and very helpful. The other thing that I think we may want to talk about is, since we are talking with our animal control officer and we're talking about pets,
Yes.
is the problem, and we discussed this yesterday as well, Doug, is what do people do with their pets should they have to evacuate? Because, you know, the Red Cross doesn't want people bringing pets to the shelters, and that can present a problem because a lot of people don't want to leave their pets. So this is another consideration people have to think about when taking into consideration they may have to evacuate their home. What are they going to do with their pets?
Sure,
You know?
good point. And people should start thinking about that now.
Certainly.
It's been so long, knock wood, since we've had a.
Right. I think people become complacent. You
I
know,
think
they
so.
get comfortable.
I think it's very easy to do.
You know, and you know, we had a tropical storm last year, and although that gave us an opportunity to see what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and helped us to improve our preparedness for future storms, I think it does, to some degree, make people become more complacent. You know, fortunately for us, we didn't have any major damage. That's a good thing. On the downside, like I said, I think it does make people a little complacent.
Yeah, and the trees have grown a couple of feet taller, and
Sure.
all that. There's more, targets for high wind and stuff. But I think we're making progress in the area, and I think that exercise yesterday was a real milestone to try to get.
I think it
things moving.
certainly was a step in the right direction. Absolutely.
Another question that came out of the last week's program with Dave Kehoe, and I just wonder if there are any major traffic problems caused by the road repairs that they've been doing. Most of them have been down by
Down at Sandy Point, Wapping Road.
Yeah.
No, we've been doing fairly well down there. Fortunately, that's not a heavily traveled section of town.
Yeah.
Most of the residents are aware of the work being conducted down there. We do have police officers working traffic details down there to regulate the traffic, and things have been going fairly well.
Yeah, and they've done a nice job so far on the
Yes,
roads. I
they
was down
certainly
there
have.
yesterday. Aside from traffic, I know Chief Hebert talked about the traffic problems on East and West Main roads, which will always be with us, I guess.
Sure.
But aside from that, what are some of the other crime-related problems in here in Portsmouth? For example, are drugs a problem?
You know, for any law enforcement officer to say drugs aren't a problem in any community, I think would probably be an
Kidding
inaccurate
themselves,
statement. Yeah, certainly. Are there drugs in Portsmouth? Absolutely. There's drugs in every community. And we're working with the resources we have to do the best we can to curb that problem. But that's a problem that has been here long before my time on the police department, and it's going to continue long thereafter.
It's always going to be there, no matter
Yeah,
what you do, I
certainly,
think.
certainly.
Same thing with alcohol and
Sure.
DUIs and stuff like that. I mean,
Right.
we're always going to have that. And hopefully some of these educational programs in the high schools and other things will help out with that.
And I think that's a big thing, is changing the behavior, changing the mindset,
Yeah.
getting the community to work with us, and getting the community to understand just how dangerous some of these activities are.
Yeah. John Klimm indicated a couple of these programs ago that the fire department, he mentioned it today as well, last week as well, the fire department was undergoing an operational audit. They were the first department in Portsmouth to undergo an operational audit. Will the police force eventually be receiving one of these audits as well? Do you know?
You know, I think you'd probably have to ask Mr. Klimm whether he plans on doing an operational audit of the police department as well. He very well may have that in mind.
Yeah.
If he has, nothing's been mentioned to me.
I know originally he said he was going to plan to have all the departments in town go through one of these things, mainly to learn how we can do things better, maybe more efficiently, et cetera.
Sure. And that's not always a bad thing.
No, absolutely. I don't think it really doesn't have a downside. The upside is you learn a
You
lot
know,
of
people
things.
are inherently opposed to change and anything that may change what they're doing. But again, sometimes change is needed.
Yeah. What other kind of safety and security issues would you like to tell people in Portsmouth that are important right now at this time of year, middle of August?
You know, one of our biggest issues now, and you touched on it, is the traffic. You know, with all the tourism, that we certainly have a huge influx of traffic with people traveling back and forth to Newport. Alcohol use is usually up during the warmer months. We've been seeing an increased volume of alcohol-related incidences, whether they're DUIs, domestics, whatever the case may be. We are seeing a lot of that. You know, and that's typical with this time of year.
Yeah.
You know?
So the message for Portsmouth citizens is to be patient and drive carefully and keep
So,
your eye
I mean,
out.
and be responsible, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, a lot of people don't plan to go out and drive drunk, but, you know, nevertheless, they find themselves in that position. I think
Yeah.
if you think a little bit ahead of time, you plan a little bit better, you may not find yourself in that position. You know, we've had, been very fortunate. We've had some incidents of people breaking into cars, left in people's driveways. You know, when we've said it time and time again, you know, the main solution to this is remove your valuables and lock your car
cars.
doors.
Yeah,
This is
I
something
keep-
that reoccurs time and time again throughout the year.
Sure.
Not just in Portsmouth, but, you know, throughout Rhode Island and
Absolutely.
neighboring communities. So.
I'd recommend keeping your doors locked in your cars, even if they're in your driveway.
Oh, absolutely.
Because,
And that's what's
people-
happening. People are going through the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They'll check cars. If they find open doors, they'll go into the car, and they'll take whatever they can find. It's
Sure.
a crime of opportunity.
Okay, well, we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank both of you for coming in, Jeff and Ariel, and welcome to Portsmouth, by the way.
Thank you
Ariel.
very much.
We're delighted to have you here, and we look forward to seeing you around town, and hopefully not giving my dogs a a timeout or anything. But thanks very much for both for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at the next edition of Portsmouth This Week.